Hello witches! And welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they. And in this video, we're gonna talk about things that irk me off in the witch community, in witchcraft. Partially in witch, let's go into it. But actually, before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a coffee. And if you like what I do here, you can support me directly there with a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And for the foreseeable future, all my income from tarot readings will split evenly between Coaches to Gaza, who support Palestinian refugees in Egypt, and the Good Law Project, who's going to bring, hopefully, trans rights back to us in the UK from the European Supreme Court of Justice. Because trans rights are human rights. So if you decide to support me there, thank you so very much. I am trying to be more chill than the last couple of videos. Not so much because the anger passed, because have you noticed the dumpster fire out there since mid-April? Worse since mid-April here, but I just don't have the energy. It's a miracle that I am filming instead of screaming in a pillow. So I will try to go into these things and it's more about the community really than any kind of witchcraft practice. This is thoughts that I have in my head. And if you have other thoughts, if you have other things that about the community, hey, leave me a comment and let's discuss them, because this is very limited to my experience and really to the things that came up to my mind. Maybe there are others that actually I really can't stand. But in this level of burnt out, I can't even remember. Point number 1, scaring people. So I don't know if you've noticed the amazing run that AnnMaddox is on recently, doing videos like taking down brick by brick the Christian cult, because there's Christianity and there's Christian cults, and Ann rightfully is going after it's not going after the cults, but he's calling out the cults that talk about anything bad is witchcraft, and it's a great series. It's maybe an involuntary series, it has become a series, but I do recommend you check it out. And I think that inspired me to put a notice on the fact that fear, scaring people, it's something that is common to cults. You need to be afraid of something to be put in line. And I don't like when we do that in witchcraft. And so, I think it's completely fair that a certain amount of information that is given to beginners that want to start practice witchcraft. And so you cast a circle, you do a spell, all those things, and rightfully you are told the first thing that you should learn is protection magic, which is completely fair, not only because protection doesn't hurt, but also because I think it's good to start from the inwards out. And so rather than expecting to affect or change the world, you try and affect and change what it's you or around you. And so I kind of understand the focus on protection magic, banishing and all of that as the first thing that is suggested to people that come to witchcraft. I don't think it's a good idea when we scare newbies so much that the only thing that they feel like doing is standing still. So I'll give you an example. It's of course something that I encountered as well when I started my witchy journey. And I think not even a month in, I had a weird experience. I think I talk about it somewhere, but in very short, I followed the instructions of a book that wasn't a great book, that is actually in my... It's not called Fuck, Marry, Kill, it's called Snog, Marry, Avoid, because we had done the family-friendly version that we have completely failed on here. And my kill was this book, because it's just a jumble of different traditions without talking about sources, without talking about traditions and why we do things a certain ways and how you respect traditions, all of that, which, if you've seen my cultural appropriation video, I am not very fond of. But worse, I think a lot of witchcraft is based in belief and how it makes you feel and how it makes you think, because I am pretty positive that there's a lot in our brain that we don't access consciously, and probably witchcraft affects that. So when we are scared, or when somebody tells us that we need to be scared, we kind of get into that mindset where if whatever could happen and it's, I don't know, a door closes because there's a draft, suddenly that's a sign, and that's a sign of something bad and all of that. So I am not one for scaring people. I think that as human beings, gifted with a mind and a physical body, we are pretty powerful beings by itself. So this idea that fear is based in ignorance, and I think that is true, and I think that when it's based in ignorance, that cannot be quite cured, because a lot of witchcraft is ephemeral. You can't verify it, you don't have receipts for it. There's a degree of belief. And when that is the case, it might very well be that fear then leads to a reaction that can do with anger. And I think that's the reason why in cults we see such focus on taking down someone else, that it's a danger from the outside coming in rather than just protecting yourself. So, again, I come from Italy. We have this tradition of like the malocchio, the evil eye, something that we basically almost invented. We have this idea that if somebody is jealous, that is enough to affect us. And I think that all of that is genuinely based in this feeling of having to look over your shoulder because your neighbor could be your enemy. I think anthropologically that comes from Italy being a very young country. I've talked about it before. Italy was all city-states before 1861, so they've barely been a country, a unified country, for 160 years now. And that endures, if you ask me. Like, the sense of being a nation is not something that Italy has achieved yet. I don't know if they ever will, because it was a bit arbitrary. Like, it happened to be a peninsula, let's put it together, but there's very different cultures in it. But anyway, that sense of I need to watch my back from anything and everything, I think that is anthropological rather than there's the malocchio in everything because everybody is jealous. So that's my first thought. Like, examine your fear, especially if it makes you become protective/aggressive in defense in your head towards people that you simply do not understand. Which brings me accidentally, perfectly, onto one of the other points. It wasn't the second, but I'm making it the second now, which is it intuition? Or is it unconscious bias? So the thing about ignorance leads to fear, leads to anger, leads to preventative action, that it's an attack. That's what's basically behind every kind of war, racism, isms in general, because you don't know something or someone, and therefore what you don't know directly is very easily weaponized against you if somebody decides that we need to make a us versus them. Fascism is that. Reform UK does that here. It tells you that your enemy are immigrants. It tells you that your enemies are whoever, the benefits scrouger, which is just really disabled people like me. So I understand how that is easy to weaponize, and I understand why anger is a really important emotion to have for a country and for governments that want to control that country. And when there's anger, you need to give an enemy to focus this anger against. Yeah, that's why systems of oppressions are important to be recognized and named, because when you name them, you understand what you are working within, fighting against, hopefully, and you can start unpack those unconscious biases. I'm going to call myself out here, and I'm going to tell you about my unconscious bias until quite recently. All that I knew about convicts, people in jail, people that ended up in prison, was from the media. And anything that the media ever told me was not society has failed these people, but these people have failed society, have failed the agreement, the social contract, and therefore we lock them up. And realistically, prison is a punishment, is not really rehabilitation. There's a beautiful pamphlet actually about the abolition of police and prison. If I find it again, I'll link it down in the description below. As you can tell, my mind has changed about what the media told me and then where I've gone. However, the unconscious bias was there. And I remember because in the last year, my friend Sofia Righetti told me about the books of, I could have the Wikipedia that also tells me what very, very famous trial he was part of, that would also very much help me. She told me about the books of Damien Echols. Now, Damien Echols was part of the West Memphis Three, along with two other people in '94. Despite the lack of physical evidence, he was convicted of a triple murder. He was in death row, and the main accusations against him was that he was a goth kid. So it was based on his look, on the music that he listened to. '94, we are just out of the satanic panic, so there's also that, I think, culturally. And Sophia made me notice Damien Echols because apparently in his books he does a lot of simplified ceremonial magic and has made stuff like the lesser banishment ritual of the pentagram accessible to disabled people. Good work, Damien. And I remember her mentioning that, and my mind automatically discarding, I probably don't need to get his books. Why? Because he's an ex-convict. And then I sat with that, and I was like, I asked Raven, and I was like, I don't think this is right, is it? And Raven was like, no, that's your unconscious bias. And I was like, good, that is something that I need to work on. And yes. So that's the kind of thing, like I recently did an intersectionality training for a charity that operates here in South Wales. And we discussed a lot about unconscious biases. And then someone asked me about the effect that trans people have on society and the effect of the UK Supreme Court ruling. And it was interesting that because this person was able on their own to say, the media keep telling me all these things that I need to fear from trans people, but I think that A, it's a very, very small community, true, and B, they say that I will have to worry in my bathroom, in my space, but I've never met a trans person that made me feel unsafe. How? And I was like, yeah, welcome. It's the point of the media. The media set an agenda. Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky is an amazing book about that, if you have the patience. And there's an article from, I think, 2007, 2008, that basically updates it, considering the internet as well, because Manufacturing Consent is from the 90s. And even then, it discussed how the issue with the media...
We've gone off the rails. Not when you're in manufacturing consent.
I'm just suggesting manufacturing consent, and then and then if you want, that's your reading list for after this video. But yeah, yes, the point about the media setting an agenda comes from the fact that when you have conglomerates that are media, and usually they are owned by billionaires, and billionaires are much more comfortable if you don't think about capitalism too much, don't think about the class divide or the class war, and you think that immigrants are going to take your jobs, and you think that benefit scroungers are the reason why the economy is down. Now the most recent thing is that actually the cost of living is higher because of green energy. So yeah, when all of these started in the 70s, 80s, which is when sort of neoliberalism was coming through. Watch my video on the opposite of capitalism and cottagecore to have an idea of what neoliberalism is. Evil, in one word. But because of that, we started off with, I think, 140 small media companies that were doing news and information that were independent. And now, especially in America, I think, but I think it extends because that's the point of conglomerates, there's 5. So your information comes from the agenda that wants to be set by 5 people, fundamentally. And what do you think they're going to tell you? It's the reason why every single article that talks about the Palestinian genocide never ever mentions in the same headline at the hands of Israel. Like, people don't just die in Gaza. Israel bombs them. Israel kills them. I have an article on my Substack about analyzing headlines and, trying to apply some sort of critical thinking to it.
Intuition.
Yes. So, what the heck does this have to do with intuition and unconscious biases? So, you're always told as a witch, your first gut instinct, it's what you should listen to. It's there for a reason. When you are interpreting a tarot reading, when you are trying to get messages from wherever, intuition is where you should go. Intuition is what you should trust. The point of unconscious biases is that a certain information has been given to you enough times that it's the reality your brain lives in. And so in my reality, a convict is a person that has no value because the media has told me so many times. They are extracted from society for how dangerous they are. Nothing they could possibly do has value. Is that the case? No. When you learn about the prison system especially, no. Society failed and prisons should not exist, if you ask me. But we're not going to go into that here. So say you join a coven and, at some point a new person comes in and there's just something off about them. You have this gut feeling. And what is about them that just, it doesn't vibe, it doesn't fit? Is there a chance that they have a characteristic that you have never seen before? And therefore it's unfamiliar, and therefore it feels from within a group like they are an outsider, potentially the enemy, therefore. Because maybe they're queer and you've never been around a queer person before. Maybe they're a person of color. You've never been around a person of color before. Maybe they are disabled and it makes you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. So pay attention to that. Yeah, intuition, but also check your privilege. In a nutshell, it helps. I'm saying it from personal experience. Because if everybody that makes you feel uncomfortable tends to share a certain trait, maybe the commonality is in you, not in the trait, because of what you've been used to see and be told. Be mindful of that. Just a thought. Again, I am at fault for that. It was so ingrained in me, the thing about, convicts, out of society, lower than human. Would I have been able to say that out loud? Absolutely not. If you had asked me, that was not the perception I had. But in that action of, a book of this person has been recommended to me. This person is an ex-convict. Clearly his book cannot be valuable. Actually, Damien's books are very valuable. I do suggest I'll link them in the description down below from Bookshop or something. But this is to say, trust me, if it happens to me, I know that it happens to everyone. If we catch it, it's good to reflect on it. And it's not bad that you thought that way. It's bad if you thought that way and you never tried to unpack that. Everybody thinks that way because we're all bombarded from a certain kind of agenda that comes from the media, from society, from culture. To sit with that and reflect, is it actually a real thing and information that is valid? Because news, especially headlines, come with this idea that they're just reporting facts. No, the entire point of conglomerates of media trying to set an agenda is that they try to give you a subtle opinion along with the fact in the way that things are worded. And you need to pay attention to that. And it's not obvious. And the fact that the news come with this idea of impartiality, not true. So pay attention to that. I know it's hard, but it helps. Point number 3, this message found you. That is scammy and preying on vulnerable people, if you ask me. I mean, collective readings are a step away from that, but I also sometimes see that, we do it to create a sense of community. Kind of get that. But this message found you. I understand considering anything beyond science, which is the larger umbrella of paganism, witchcraft, and all of that. And I understand that one of the ways that is more common than not to come to this community is that something bad happened in your life. And I know because it's my case. So we had a loss in the family, we had bereavement, and as an autistic person, maybe I take it, I don't know, a bit intensely. To me, it's the only way. But I understand if, like, the first dipping the toes in anything witchy could be because you've lost someone that was dear to you, and hey, isn't it time to try a psychic or something like that? First, I would recommend, if that has ever happened to you, give it time before doing that. Give it time, because when you are grieving, it's too easy to prey on us. So be mindful of that. I know firsthand the need for meaning, a resolution, especially that comes from loss and death. It's not something that you can find outside. But this is the reason why I find this message found you kind of videos and content creators a bit sketchy, because when you are grieving, the finest of threads can lead you. Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing, Leonato. And it's something to be mindful of, and it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary to do a piece of content that is going to reach thousands, sometimes millions of people, and you scratch at that itch that people have about the need to feel singled out and therefore special, and maybe it is needed to find me. Usually when that happens, there's a vulnerability there that it can be preyed upon. So I'm not into that. 4. Is it 4? I think it's 4. Individuality. Why does it sound bad?
Individualization.
I think individualization is a better word for it. And so it's when a witch, a content creator, a person that is public, creates this tight knit around them, completely cutting off and ignoring the rest of the world from it. And so it feels like it should be community, but it's a very clear mailing list of potential customers. And again, because witchcraft is spirituality, or spirituality adjacent, I understand the vulnerability. I understand there is not necessarily always receipts and confirmations, and I understand the need to check with someone else that understands the need that you have to go to witchcraft at all, and that doesn't think, you're crazy, babes. I understand that. I understand the importance of comparing notes and having this kind of group. It becomes problematic when it's all about revolving around this person, and this person does not make you aware, and maybe sometimes consciously cuts you off from the outside, and just their witchcraft practice is the most valid. You should listen to them because nobody else gets it quite like them. And there are also other issues about what's going on in the larger culture, which will go in another point. But that risk of closing off, be mindful. Are you a part of a community, or are you a potential customer? Just reflect on that. Which leads me magnificently well to my last point, which is being apolitical. I mean, I'm telling you, and you're on a channel that is called Activist Twitch, but you might know how popular an idea it is that, oh, we're talking about witchy things, we're talking about herbs, we're talking about crystals, spells. Why do you have to bring politics into it? Where the heck do I start with this? So, first things first. Anyone in any context that tells you don't bring politics into it comes from enough privilege that does not have to worry about the consequences that politics have on them. You might not want to do politics, politics will do you. Because, by the way, you go to your witchy shop, you get your candles, you get your crystals, you go home and you do your spell, and none of that, you think, has to do with Westminster, which is where we have the government here in the UK. Babes, before the Fortune Tellers Act, you couldn't have that. If you had a shop that was marketed to witches, that was illegal. That was an anti-Roma kind of law, and it also was before, I think, it's not the Witchcraft Act, but it's called something like that. I'll find it and I'll put it here. And that was the issue of you cannot tell that you're a witch, because after the Enlightenment, witches did not exist, but you were clearly trying to fool someone into selling them something, so it was a scam. So you could not go under the moniker of witch. And the simple fact that you have the shops to go in, it was political. There was a law passed around it, and that's why you can do that. To give you an idea, when I do tarot readings in markets, not often, but sometimes I do, I have to adapt to capitalism, late stage, and I have a card reader, a credit card reader. And I was, I think, with SumUp, because it had the least amount of fees that it would take. I used it once. And then, the next day, SumUp decided to get in touch with me because every sale I did, I put down in the receipt as tarot reading. Well, what do you know? There are certain providers of the service that, not even the credit card itself, but the service that lets you take a payment from the card. They are like, yeah, no, we don't dirty our hands with something as sketchy as a tarot reading. So no. I mean, that's the reason why when you buy a tarot reading on Etsy or even on my coffee, the point is always, A, for entertainment purposes. Like, let's be clear here. So believe me, the fact that we can do anything witchy, and a lot of things we can't do still, it is political. And without having to go wider, I will bring to you the example recently of Eurovision. If you don't know, we the gays were the reason why Eurovision was so huge and big and we loved it. And yes, more camp, yay! Do you remember 2021 when Måneskin won? Oh my goodness, yes, more gay. Yeah. If you know, the gays have started to boycott Eurovision last year because they wouldn't ban Israel. They banned Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine. Why have they not banned Israel? And Israel is doing a genocide in Palestine. No, they didn't. They didn't listen. And this year, just in case, they doubled down and they forbade any flag other than a country flag, so LGBT flags, from being put on stage. And then you go on other witchy channels that just talk about how much they enjoy Eurovision. And personally, I cannot, in good conscience, stay subscribed there, because if you do not understand the discourse that is around it, if you think that you're being apolitical by watching a show that actually allows Israel there and therefore endorses the genocide that they are doing, trying to normalize it, oh, you're being political. You're just siding with the oppressor. The concept itself of being apolitical, oh, it's political. Again, when you do nothing, when you don't go to vote, it's actually something that Italy is currently doing. The simple fact that you think you're doing nothing, it means that you are supporting the status quo. How things are outside now, you're fine with it, you're fine with them continuing that way and in that direction. I think the irony is that in propaganda all along, we talked about how, the entire Marvel universe and the entire existence of superhero is actually there to be reactionary, and so doesn't want to change things, wants to keep things the way they are. And every time you want to change things is depicted as an act of violence and therefore connected to murder, and so you can't really change things. So, just be aware of that. You think you're being apolitical, A, politics is doing you, and B, you are taking a stance. It's just the status quo stance, which in late-stage capitalism, in white supremacy, under patriarchy, it's oppression of all the categories that are not cis, white, het, able, rich men. I hope that gives you a flavor of where I stand on what I do in witchcraft, what I mostly don't do in witchcraft and do not endorse. And if you have any questions, again, or if you have any ideas, anything that you want to add, comments are there. And until the next video, I really hope that we can fucking hex the patriarchy together, because fuck me if there's need for it.